Surah 3 verse 55 is the very clear verse that debunks Islam entirely for multiple reasons. We have discussed this verse in detail before, so we will not go into a lot of detail, but we will show some curious stuff. For more details about this verse, you can watch this video or that video and you will understand things in greater depth. But today, let's just have a little bit of fun with it. We see that this verse very clearly says that Allah will make those who follow Isa superior to those who disbelieve until the day of resurrection. This is an unqualified statement. Based on this verse alone, there is no room left in the Quran for a new revelation, a new prophet, new rules, or anything of the sort. In fact, in any other places in the Quran where new rules are given, they will never mention Muhammad, but the messenger, with the only exceptions of the very few verses that talk about Muhammad, which, as we have discussed as well before, are titles for Jesus. You can see that on the video on screen now. Let's have a look at this tafsir. Jesus Christ was born into the Jewish community, but the Jews did not affirm his prophethood. Instead, they made out a false case against him and took him to the Roman court in Palestine. Remember, this is supposed to be addressing Surah 3 verse 55, where it says that those who follow Jesus will be superior to those who disbelieve. In here, it is making it very clear that those who disbelieve would have been the Jews, but the tafsir writer did not realize what he was doing. But it continues by saying that the court decreed to have him crucified, but God saved him, and the Roman soldiers crucified another person who resembled Jesus, taking him to be the Christ. We have also unpacked that on previous videos, so we will not go into the details of all of the other tafsirs where they tell different stories as to what happened on the cross. But in this verse, it is clear that it is saying the Jews are the ones who did not believe in Jesus. To punish this crime of the Jews, God decreed that the believers in Jesus Christ would forever, till doomsday, have dominion over the Jewish people.
Wait, what did he say again?
This is what was decreed by God for this world. The hereafter, however, is a different matter. And here we can see the major problem with this verse. It says very clearly that it is the Christians who will be superior until the day of judgment. Therefore, those who disbelieve would have been disbelieving in Jesus. When we delve into the Quran, there are major problems, because the Quran never describes what it is exactly that the Jews disbelieved about Jesus. In fact, by reading the Quran, you would get the impression that all that Jesus did was to say, worship one God. Saying that to the Jews 2,000 years ago would have been very silly, because at that point, they had not gone to worship Baal or anything of the sort. They were hardcore monotheists. They were spending half of their lives at the synagogues. They memorized the scriptures and they obeyed the law. In fact, the problem would have been that they followed the law too closely, not that they were not worshiping God. They were still performing sacrifices and so on. Very clearly, when the Quran was written, those who disbelieve in Jesus was disbelieving in his message, in his person, and the new covenant. All of those things are not addressed in Islam at all. If you enjoy uncovering the truths behind Quranic verses, mistranslations, fabricated hadiths, and tafsirs, hit the like button and subscribe now. And stay tuned for the next exposés. Thank you. Now, on with the show. When we look at Tafsir Al-Jalalayn, we see that he sneaks in something that is a lot of fun. He writes, and mentioned when God said, "Oh Jesus, I am gathering you, seizing you, and raising you to me." We've discussed this in previous shows. That is not what it says. It says, "Mutawafika, I will cause you to die and raise you to me." Away from the world, without death. Mutawafika literally means death. And it continues. So those who disbelieved, and I am setting those who follow you, those Christians and Muslims who believed in your prophethood, and so on. We have now major problems, because if you read the Quran according to the standard Islamic narrative, the only prophecy of Jesus would be, hey, I am here, trust me, someone will come after me. That is very silly. As the Messiah, he accomplished nothing and he did nothing, and his message was nonsense. Jesus could have been skipped entirely and then Muhammad would have appeared. But Al-Jalalayn feels compelled to tell us that those who follow Jesus, those who believed in Jesus, they are not Christians, but they are Christians and Muslims, even though Muslims did not exist at that time. That is a concept that it is most likely introduced in the 8th century if the evidence found in inscriptions is finally proven to be conclusive. So no Christians and Muslims, just Christians. But Al-Jalalayn has to shoehorn that term to deceive everybody, because otherwise people would understand that the verse is clearly saying the Christians would be superior to those who disbelieve until the day of judgment, and therefore there is no new revelation, there is no new prophet, and nothing of the sort. It will be from the time of Jesus until the day of resurrection, those believing in the message of Jesus would be superior to those who didn't. And that message would exclusively be found in the Bible. When we look at Ibn Abbas, he tells us once again the problem of I am gathering thee, even though the Arabic is very clear. It uses the word mutawafika. It says that God would cause him to die. As discussed before in Surah 5, verse 117, then Jesus is using the same term to confirm that he was caused to die. And when we continue reading, we see that Ibn Abbas says, then I shall make you to die after descent. So he has to explain away the very clear statement about Jesus' death by pushing that to the end of days, when he returns and then he gets killed. That is ignoring entirely that Surah 5, 117 confirms that the event has already happened.
You serious?
And then things get a little bit weird, because we have this wonderful word that appears so much in tafsirs, which is, it is also said. So we don't have one version, but we have multiple versions of what a very clear verse very clearly means in the very clear Arabic. It is also said, this means, I shall make your heart die to the love of the life of this world.
Really?
Then unto me you will all return after death, and I shall judge between you as to that wherein in religion you used to differ, to argue. The only explanation that we get here from Ibn Abbas is when it says, those who disbelieve in you, and I am setting those who follow you, follow your religion above those who disbelieve. So he doesn't actually make it clear who these are. But that would be very clearly the apostles, the followers. Those are the same people that all the way up to the 7th century, nobody had questioned. Everybody was very clear that they had followed Jesus and they went to their bloody deaths preaching the good news. Yet, by the time that we get to the 7th century, a verse that makes that very clear, that those who follow Jesus would be superior to those who disbelieve, would have been the apostles and everyone that came after. Yet, after the 7th century, probably around the 10th century, a new message is being sent.
The message.
Which is that the previous scriptures had been corrupted because they did not match the scriptures Muslims were pushing as divine. When all that we have to do is simply read the Quran in a neutral manner and see that when the Quran says that Allah would make those who follow Jesus superior to those who disbelieve until the day of judgment, it means exactly that. This was written by Christians. Then we have Kashani Tafsir, which is always a lot of fun because he doesn't talk about anything of this universe. I shall set those who follow you of the spiritual ones above those who disbelieved, of the egocentric ones, until the day of the greater resurrection and the arrival at the station of the unity. Nothing of that is in the Quran. It is not talking about the day of judgment, but an event that already happened, because Surah 5 verse 117 confirms that the death of Jesus was already caused by Allah, and that those who follow Jesus would have been those following his message, which is not in the Quran in the slightest. That's it for a very, very clear verse that says that those who follow Jesus would be superior to those who disbelieve until the day of judgment. When that was written, it meant exactly that. But when we go to the Tafsir writers, we will see them trying to give us a very different explanation. For example, that the Allah causing Jesus to die is not an event in the past, but an event in the future, even though we can debunk that by looking at Surah 5 verse 117. And when we see the very clear verse that Allah would make those who follow Jesus superior to those who disbelieve, it would really just mean that. After all, this was written around the 7th century, where Christendom was massive, so it would have been immediately understood what it meant. However, in some of the tafsirs we see, they are trying to make it sound as though those who follow Jesus, the Christians, would be superior to the Jews, but ignoring everybody else. And as always, they have to make this about Muslims, because this very clear statement is making the Muslims be on the wrong team. The sheer insanity of this is that the Quran very clearly says that those who follow Jesus will be superior, yet Muslims insist that means following Muhammad, contradicting their book entirely. Anyway, I hope that you have enjoyed this very brief breakdown, and we will see you all soon on the next one. Stay well, God bless you all, bye-bye.
There is only one Quran, right? Every Quran in the world is the same. That's what you've been told. You have been told a lie!
26 of the Quran.
26 different Quran!
There are 0 Dawa guys apparently left on the planet who are willing to defend Muhammad in a debate.
Everybody can go and read it. This is a book full of mistakes in Arabic, in the grammar, in the spelling, in the pronunciation.
Whoever wrote the Quran made an error because they didn't quite understand what was written in the 7th century in the Torah and the Injil.
Stay away from these translations, they are propaganda.
We know that stories about Muhammad were made up on an industrial scale.
What in the world is this Injil?